And so I wanted to kind of look at this idea of unity and to see what does it mean to us, not just in being able to accept and respect all other traditions and to learn from them, and not only being able, what I really like is being able to use them as an adjunct. I find that the ideas forming in my head around this have been sort of like mathematics. It doesn't matter what culture developed what in mathematics. The Indians developed. I don't know enough to make this statement in a educated way, but like the Indians came up with zero apparently, and the Egyptians came up with something else, and they're not. We don't hold the camp of the zero and the camp of whatever the Egyptians did, and keep everything separate in boxes. They use each other's studies and information as an adjunct together to share notes and to build up for new ideas and prove new truths. And I'm starting to see religion like that. That why did we wall these things off? Why did we get our egos involved and say this was developed here and it's for itself and it's only true within itself, and ours over here is only true within itself, and boom boom boom. Why don't we take those borders down and cross pollinate and deepen our understandings in much the same way that we do with every other thing that we learn and study in this world? And as I've kind of become more comfortable with that idea, wow, it's like having a whole bouquet of flowers. It's there's so much beauty in it, and it's real. The more I've pushed into it, the more I see it. The more I trust that unity, and understand that even though sometimes the words and the ideas sound like they're different, that in their essence, or if you take one leap up or one leap back, you'll touch the same truth. You'll see the sameness. You might have to work with the numbers a little bit, but you'll come to that truth. So let's kind of go all the way back. One of the earliest Vedas we have, the Rig Veda, and there's this beautiful poem or shloka in there that says the human body is the temple of God. Now, everybody has heard that. I know growing up as a fundamentalist Christian, I heard that constantly, that this body is the temple of God. It's where God dwells. And one who kindles the light of awareness within gets true light. Kindling the awareness. What would that mean to you? How do you kindle awareness? I mean, isn't awareness a constant? How do you kindle awareness? What is he talking about there?
I think it's becoming aware of the awareness, the attention that one puts close to what Eckhart Tolle talks about.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, the awareness of awareness. Ramana Maharshi uses those words exactly to practice the awareness of awareness. He says that's where bliss lies. That's where you can experience that bliss. But it's also becoming aware of, when we identify with mind, we're not separate from it, so we're in it. It's surrounding us. Like I'm wearing this shirt right now, so I can't see it. I can't see the backside. I can't see the inside. But if I don't wear the shirt, if I don't identify with the shirt and I hold it and know that it's separate, I can look at that shirt from all the different angles. And I think part of this cultivating awareness he's talking about is separating from the mind and watching it so that you can see its underlying patterns. You can see the truth about how it operates. And then you can easily recognize that it's not a sentient tool, that it's rote. One of the first things that I actually picked this up in eighth grade with our creative writing teacher had said. She said, I want your homework for this weekend is to come up with a use for a tire that you've never heard of or seen before. Right? Wow. Did I rack my brain for a whole weekend to try and figure out a use for a tire that I had never seen before? lots of very creative things came to mind, but I realized they were seeded by something I had seen before. And now in Vedanta, I understand that the mind is just a machine that 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 exudes thought. Like your sweat glands sweat, your mind produces thought, and that every thought is directly related to the previous thought. You can't break that chain. So it's the wheel of samsara, that's just spinning. And when you begin to see those mechanical aspects of mind, you're much less inclined to move into it and say, that's me. You begin to see those patterns of thought. You begin to see how those samskaras gather together and cause a state of being, a mood, if you want, or just a state of thinking. And those build up. Some of them become permanent states of thinking, a collection of thoughts that you have grouped together that create an activity, create a behavior in you that you think is part of your personality, that helps you identify yourself with mind. And so I think this kindling of the light of awareness is kindling that knowledge of separateness from body and mind, and observing carefully, which is what they call that discernment, that discrimination. In the scriptures, I'm reading through the Viveka Chudamani right now, and I did not remember how serious discernment is taught in there. They really emphasize you should have your mind discerning its own thinking all the time, all day long, always and always. And it says that is the only way to reach enlightenment. Of course, they're talking about their more of a yamic path in there, but that this constant discernment is that kindling of our awareness, this light of awareness. So one who kindles this light of awareness within gets true light. You get a true understanding because things become apparent to you. The workings of mind become apparent. Your habits become apparent. The mechanical nature of mindless existence becomes apparent. How we are most of the time on autopilot. We've done all this before. We've gotten up, we've had our coffee, we make our toast, we get on the bus, we go to work. We're just kind of boop, 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 boop. And we don't understand that every moment is new and that none of this has been done before, that we are fresh in every moment. And so that is kindling that light within. So the sacred flame of your inner shrine is constantly bright. So by kindling this light of awareness, we're not making it brighter. We're not developing the light itself. It is always bright. It is always present. The experience of unity is the fulfillment of human endeavor. This discovery of one without a second is the whole point of this human endeavor, according to this scripture. And what I really like is that this is a very old Veda. This is one of the first spiritual teachings available to the world as we know it from this perspective, from this day and time.
That's just beautiful, Swami. Wow.
Isn't it?
That just
Yeah.
bowls me over. It's gorgeous.
It really, really, really is.
It really
It's just,
is. Yeah.
and what it really says to me is that humans have always been humans. It's, from the Western perspective of history and whatnot, we imagine and we always depict these cavemen as just grunting, running around, drooling and grunting and, carrying on like animals. These are times that are not that far from those times, and you see how the philosophy has already developed so profoundly. I was just hearing last week that they think they've discovered some of the reasons for these cave paintings. That we always see the paintings of reindeer and buffaloes and whatnot, and there'll be lines and there'll be dots and stuff. And they have found that at least the cave paintings they were studying in France were actually records of the reproduction cycles and mating cycles of all of these different animals for hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot more than just pretty art on the wall or graffiti. That shows a science, that shows a study, that shows an intelligence. And I think that, you know, these religious ideas, these spiritual ideas, these philosophical ideas, I don't think they were part of religion for them. I think they really saw it as life itself, which is why they would say something like the experience of this unity, knowing that some people have had this experience. Otherwise, how could they write about it? So people had already fully developed paths of enlightenment and practices for enlightenment, even, you know, what is this, maybe 5, 8,000? You never know. When you go and try and find a date for these things, they literally are all over the place. So the experience of unity is the fulfillment of human endeavor. So the purpose of your life is not to feed your children and to take care of your health and to, you know, cut your toenails. The purpose of our life is exactly this, is to come to this understanding, this knowledge of divinity, of what life is, why and how. The mysteries of life are revealed. So that's its own promise right there. The mysteries of why, the mysteries of how, the mysteries of what. All of this is available to know. It is not just to be made up. You know, oh, decide what the purpose of your life is. You know, there's a definite purpose to your life. What is the meaning of life? Well, you may not know. You can posit what you like, but the mystery of that will be and can be revealed. It is a knowable knowledge, or, you know, maybe not knowable in the sense of mind knowledge, but knowable in the sense of intuitive knowledge. So that brought me to this wondering, well, let's look in Christianity, because that's, you know, where do you find this idea of one without a second in Christianity? And so I went and found the last prayer that Jesus prays on earth the night before he's crucified, the last time he talks to the Father. And he says, I ask not for the sake of these only, these few disciples that he has in the garden with him, but for the sake of those who believe in me because of the word of these, so that everyone may be one, as you, Father, are in me and I in you, so that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. And I have given them the glory that you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them, you in me, so that they may be made perfect as one, so that the world may learn that you sent me and loved them as you loved me. Father, I wish that wherever I am, those whom you gave me may be with me also, so that they may look upon my glory which you gave me, because you loved me before the establishment of the world. Righteous Father, even the world did not recognize you, but I recognized you, and these realized that you sent me, and I have made your name known to them, and they will make it known, so that the love you had for me may be in them, and I may be in them. So he's talking, you know, from that path of bhakti, the path of the avatar, you know, about this oneness, he's that go-between, that hole through which God can be experienced, through which God can be seen, you know, and that the avatar, that all the avatars is not plural, you know, in my mind. There are not many avatars. There's one avatar who keeps coming. You know, he came as Buddha, he came as Krishna, he came as Rama, he came as Jesus, you know, he came as whoever your indicator is. That is the same being, the same person, the same I. And that's how you resolve these statements by, like, Krishna, that he's the only way, or Jesus, that he's the only way. You know, that when an avatar uses the I, we know he sees his oneness with God. I and the Father are one. So his I does not refer to a personality, body, mind. He knows, he's already done that work. He knows the separation between that. So when they say I, when the avatar says I, he means the avatar, that eternal being who continually comes, as the oldest scripture says, over and over, to apparently to help this machine out, to help this person out, to help us out. So we see the unity there in the last prayer of Jesus. That was the whole purpose of his life, to unify. There's another verse in Matthew, which I didn't include tonight, but if you go to the think like chapter 27 of Matthew or something, you can read his, or 17 maybe. It's got a 7 in it. Anyway, in Matthew, where he prays the same prayer. And you see that in his last and final prayer in this world, it's this oneness, this unity. And in the quote in Matthew, he says that the thing that creates this unity, the thing that holds that unity together within us, is a deep understanding of divine love. You know, that it is love that binds that oneness. So I found that important because it's his last prayer. You know, his mission is done. His final prayer to God is for oneness for everybody. And then in the Chicago address, kind of coming from the other angle, we've got the first message of Vivekananda to the United States, to the West, when he comes. And he says, therefore, the world is waiting for this grand idea of universal toleration. It will be a great acquisition to civilization. Nay, no civilization can exist unless this idea enters into it. No civilization can grow unless fanatics, bloodshed, and brutality stop. No civilization can begin to lift up its head until we look charitably upon one another. And the first step toward that much needed charity is to look charitably and kindly upon the religious convictions of others. Nay, more, to understand that not only should we be charitable, but positively helpful to each other, however different our religious ideas and convictions may be. And that is exactly what we do in India, as I have just related to you. It is here in India that Hindus have built and are still building churches for Christians and mosques for Mohammedans. That is the thing to do. In spite of their hatred, in spite of their brutality, in spite of their cruelty, in spite of their tyranny, and in spite of the vile language they have given to uttering, we will and must go on building churches for Christians and mosques for the Mohammedans until we conquer through love, until we have demonstrated to the world that love alone is the fittest thing to survive and not hatred, that it is gentleness that has strength to live on and to fructify, and not mere brutality and physical force. So you see his real conviction there, you know, a real draw for this, not just tolerance. Who is one person to tolerate another? You know, it's this acceptance, a full embrace of one another as we all are, you know, and to have that light of awareness, kindling that light of awareness so we see the sameness before we see the difference. Right? That was one of the things I learned over and over and over with Swami Prabhupada. Every single Memorial Day, he'd get up there and he would give the same speech. You know, I heard it 14 times. He would get up there and he says, today is a day to talk about the things we agree on. He says, it is not a day to talk about our differences. He says, and I think that once you get started talking about our agreements, we will run out of time to talk about our disagreements. You know, and so this is that idea that when we study comparative religions, it shouldn't be a contrasting. You know, how many sermons growing up did I hear about Hinduism, about Buddhism, and it was always from the perspective of why they're wrong. You know, why they're wrong. And so many times I go to these interfaith meetings and everybody's there and everybody's being very nice to each other. But you can still get that sense in the air that everybody is there to demonstrate theirs is the best. You know, we're together, we're talking about it. Yes, we're being nice to each other. Yes, this is a good idea. But really, when it comes down to it, you know, I'm here just to kind of show you guys. But anyway, that aside, this is our knowledge. This is our goal of life, to know this unity. And this unity is a direct practicality to how to live. It's finding a sameness between each of us, you know, and not emphasizing the differences, and using those samenesses to arrive at an understanding of the differences so that we can be different and still respect and still love and still serve each other. Vivekananda goes on, he says, the other great idea that the world wants from us today, the thinking part of Europe, nay, the whole world, is that eternal grand idea of the spiritual oneness of the whole universe. I need not tell you today, men from Madras University, how the modern researches of the West have demonstrated through physical means the oneness and the solidarity of the whole universe. How, physically speaking, you and I, the sun, moon, the stars, are but little waves of wavelets in the midst of an infinite ocean of matter. How Indian psychology demonstrated ages ago that similarly both body and mind are but mere names or little waves in the ocean of matter. And how, going one step further, it is shown in the Vedanta that behind that idea of the unity of the whole show, the real soul is one. None can regenerate this land of ours without the practical application and effective operation of this ideal of the oneness of things, the oneness of all things. You know, that this is the seed to right thinking. And as a matter of fact, he says in one of his lectures where he's describing ethics, he says that is the one rule of ethics. All ethics is built on the idea of oneness. Anything that moves toward oneness is virtue. Anything that moves toward multiplicity is vice. And I had quite a few very fun little meditations where I would pick up a virtue or pick up an idea of a vice and try and see that in that. Is it true? Is it true that all virtues are because of an idea of oneness that they contain? Is it true that all vices cause disparity or cause multiplicity? And so it's a good thing to study. It's one of the ways to kindle that light of awareness inside, is to think about things like this. And it goes on. This actually is a very old quote, and it's actually attributed to several different people. It's quoted as a scripture. It's quoted as a line in a poem, and it's quoted by some of the modern or contemporary folks quite often. As the different streams, having their sources in different places, all mingle their water in the sea, O Lord, so the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. Right? Everything leads to that oneness. Study from any angle. That's why I like this idea. I think through studying art, you can find this. Anything that you study in earnestness for truth will bring you to this knowledge of oneness. Even Vivekananda's example of studying a grain of sand on the seashore, that studying anything, peering into anything, will betray the oneness behind it. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through many paths, which in the end lead to me. There's a restaurant called Community here in Lafayette that's got a big painting of a big sentence painted across the front wall of their outdoor seating area. It says, everybody you meet is fighting battles that you are not even aware of. Let kindness be your guide. And this here really says that all men are struggling through many paths, which in the end lead to me. So we should understand that there is a motive of love in everything that everybody is doing. No matter how offensive we find it, no matter how little we understand it, as Vedantists, whose task is to kindle this light of awareness, is to look at what people are doing until we can see what it is they love. Until we can see that name of God or that quality of the divine that's flickering in that behavior for them that they're going after. Because everyone is working through their own path, which ultimately will lead to God. It's just a wonderful level of respect and trust to develop in each other, through which a lot of our problems and a lot of our arguments and differences could be resolved, in a peaceful way. If we would stop thinking each other are morons or stupid or, pig-headed or all these things you'll hear people say. instead of taking that route, understand that we're all human beings doing the very best that we can do to reach whatever it is we think we're going for, whatever our working ideal is. And for us to learn to look for each other's ideal, to try and understand each other's ideal, and to stare at those ideals until the divinity in them become available to us, so that we can maintain that respect, that trust, that love, that help, that willingness to build their churches, to build their temples, to build their mosques, to help them on their way, on the path that they're taking, not to demand a change of path to our path, or even a difference. You can inspire them to difference, if that's the case, but that always has to happen through love. So the master, here we go, from Sri Ramakrishna, he's talking to Bhagavan Das, and he says, the eternal religion, this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's so powerful. The eternal religion, the religion of the rishis, has been in existence from time out of mind and will exist eternally. There exist in this Sanatana Dharma, this eternal religion, all forms of worship of God with form, and worship of the impersonal deity as well. It contains all paths, the path of knowledge, the path of devotion, the path of action, the path of the royal path, meditation, mind control. So you see here, he's saying that this Sanatana Dharma, that's the main driving idea behind this experiment of creating a Vedanta center that presents as no particular religion, is a grasping toward this idea, to come up with this notion that there is a oneness in all paths, and let people come together. Let us all worship together on our own path together, to hold this ideal, and to really work at developing a place where a person from any religion could come in and find their place without even really having to look for it, to come in and just feel respected, loved, honored, and encouraged to go forward. So Ramakrishna, he tells this great story here about why is this so difficult? Why has the world had such a problem with recognizing this fundamental truth in all things? He says, I think I should tell you a story which would illustrate the cause of this variance. A frog lived in a well. It had lived there for a long time. It was born there. It was brought up there, and yet was a little small frog. Of course, the evolutionists were not there then to tell us whether the frog had lost its eyes or not, but for our story's sake, we must take for granted that it does have its eyes, and that it every day has cleaned the water of all the worms and bacteria that lived in it, and an energy that would do credit to our modern bacteriologists. In this way, it went on and became a little sleek and fat. Well, one day, another frog that lived in the sea came and fell into the well. Where are you from? I am from the sea. The sea? How big is that? Is it as big as my well? And he took a leap from one side of the well to the other. My friend, said the frog of the sea, how do you compare this sea with your little well? Then the frog took another leap and asked, is your sea so big? What nonsense you speak! To compare the sea to your well? Well then, said the frog of the well, nothing can be bigger than my well. There can be nothing bigger than this. This fellow is a liar, and he threw him out. So we've got, what is our well? What is our well? Fundamentally, we have many wells, but what's one of them? What's the well that we primarily? What's that?
Is it our world, our conception of the world that we live in?
Yes. Yeah, it is that for sure. The primary one is our ego. To think that because we all are pretty sure that we're right most of the time, right?
Mhm.
We're pretty sure. And if somebody says something different from what we already think, we're skeptical immediately. I'm not sure. The second one can be our nationality, can be a well. Our town, our state, go to Texas. There's no well as great as Texas. Every Texan will tell you, you know. And there's people who love Colorado. There's people who love California. I've lived in many of them, and while I'm there, I love them all. But it's funny. We have all of these wells that we develop for our own safety, for our own security, because in truth, we know nothing. In truth, we can't really know anything about this universe. We have such a small amount of information available to us. And yet from those five dinky senses, we already know that five senses, how small of a selection of input is that? How there's ultraviolet lights that we know of that we can't see, that we can't detect. We've created machinery to hear things that we can't hear. That even the five senses that we have are not complete. They can only see a range of possibilities within each one of those. And so how many senses are there out there, that would reveal this universe? I was listening yesterday on YouTube to this man who had a death experience as a fireman back in the 1980s, actually. And what he was saying is that there are many realities going on in this same room that you're in right now, and that it's a matter of tuning to frequency that allows you to experience or move from one to the next. He was saying that the world of angels, the worlds of demons, the heavens and the hells, you don't go to them. He said in his experience, in his death experience, that he felt the changing of the tuning within that lifted him out of the material and brought him into a spiritual reality. And he saw these energetic, folks. And, I'm not openly subscribing to everything that he saw, but this was his way of talking. And it's perfectly possible, right? I mean, your radio station, it's coming from the same air around you. It's just a matter of tuning as to what station you can hear, as to what song you're listening to, or what the nature of the information coming in is. And so to understand that everything is here and now, that this moment, the eternal moment, it doesn't just contain all of time. Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharshi, Sri Nisargadatta, they all say that this moment contains the entire past and projects the entire future. That everything is contained in the present, in this moment. And so now you can add to that all physical locations, all all heavens and hells, all worlds are within this one place. So this frog in the well, open our minds, keep stretching our understanding, put what we know aside when we learn something new, just to sit and hear it out, because what may seem as impossible, I had the same experience. I went to Rarotonga once in 1990 something or rather, I don't remember, but it was a little island in the South Pacific. It was 1,000 miles from anything else. And I met people that were born and raised on this little island that you could walk across in an afternoon. And that's all they had ever seen. That's all they had ever experienced. And they were very curious, about me coming from the United States. They didn't have that many tourists there. There was only 10,000 people on the island to begin with. But they would ask me, and I would tell them about living on a continent, I would tell them that how strange it was to me to think of living my whole life on that island where they lived. And you could tell when I was telling them that really the best they could do was to think of America as a really big island. And that their really big island was not a 7-day island to drive across, that you knew that they couldn't think of something like that. There was it would be pure imagination for them to imagine something like that. And so be aware of that in yourself. Be aware of your smallness. Be aware of the very little bit that we know. Don't take refuge in your knowledge. Take refuge in the divine. Take refuge in this idea of oneness. Take refuge in the idea of love. Take refuge in the idea of wisdom and growth. But don't sit on your laurels of what you know. Because what seems right, certainly all of us are of an age where we are coming to know that. You've believed many different things at different times in your life, and you've believed them absolutely, and you outgrow them. You change, and you look back and you think, wow, I used to think, I used to believe. And always allow that for yourself. Don't be afraid to be new. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to learn something. So this is our problem, is living in small wells. In the Chicago Addresses, Vivekananda says, the seed is put in the ground, and the earth and the air and the water are placed around it. Does the seed become the earth or the air or the water? No, it becomes a plant. It develops after the law of its own growth, assimilates the air, assimilates the earth, assimilates the water, and converts them into plant substance and grows into a plant. Similar is the case with religion. The Christian is not to become a Hindu or a Buddhist, nor a Hindu or a Buddhist become a Christian, but each must assimilate the spirit of the others and yet preserve his individuality and to grow according to his own law of growth. So we assimilate. We don't become these things. We assimilate. We take in the best parts, the necessary parts, the nourishing parts, and we grow in our own way, in our own tradition, in our own understanding of things, but always holding that Gyannic knowledge of one without a second, of the oneness of all of these disparate things in the corner of our dhoti, in our pants pocket. Just keep it in your pocket. Go down every now and then, put your hand on there, feel it there, and be like, oh yeah, everything in the end is one. And that keeps the judgment down. That keeps the fanaticism at bay. It keeps the exclusive notions at bay. When you're married to somebody, you should think that they are the most handsome or the most beautiful partner in the world. Of course you do. It's natural. But don't go around to the party and tell everybody else that their partners are ugly. That's not the way to do it. Understand that they sit in the same place you do with their partners, and appreciate, well, it's probably not a good idea to appreciate the beauty of their partners, but at least make the allowance within yourself for everybody to have their own most beautiful partner, which of course reminds me of that lovely in the Bhagavatam, the story of Krishna. I've shared this because it's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite stories about the divine, where he's dancing around the fire, playing his flute in the woods, and all the gopi girls are all dancing around the fire with him. And the narrator says that every gopi girl thought that she was Krishna's favorite. Every one of them. That tells you a little bit something about divine love, that God can make everybody in the room feel like they are his favorite. And the more beautiful thing about it is that and this is where we have to expand our ideas, when we're talking about an infinite love, divine love, a love with no purpose, with no cause, that you are, in fact, God's favorite, or the favorite of the divine, and that does not diminish anybody else's being the favorite, because there's an infinite well from which God loves, from which we can love. And so it's not a graduated relationship. You are, in fact, God's favorite. And it's okay to think that way, to feel that way, to act that way, as long as you don't diminish the possibility of everybody else being God's favorite to the same degree. So this is how we absorb and build or assimilate this knowledge to increase our light of awareness, to develop our seeing and our understanding. There's a wonderful letter that was written to Alasingo Perumal from New York on the 19th of November, 1894. He says in his letter, Vivekananda, nothing else is necessary but these: love, sincerity, and patience. There's nothing else necessary but these: love, sincerity, and patience. What is life but growth, expansion, love? Therefore, all love is life. It is the only law of life. All selfishness is death, and this is true here or hereafter. For none lives, my boys, but he who loves. Feel, my children. Feel. Feel for the poor. Feel for the ignorant, the downtrodden. Feel until the heart stops and the brain reels and you think that you will go mad. Then pour your soul out at the feet of the Lord, and then will come power, then will come help and indomitable energy. Struggle. Struggle was my motto for the last 10 years. Struggle still, say I. When it was all dark, I used to say, struggle. When the light is breaking in, I still say, struggle. Be not afraid, my children. Look not up in that attitude of fear toward the infinite starry vault as if it would crush you. Wait. In a few hours more, the whole of it will be under your feet. Wait. Money does not pay, nor fame. Fame does not pay. Name does not pay, nor learning. It is love that pays. It is character that cleaves its way through the adamantine walls of difficulty. One of the most beautiful things. What a beautiful, beautiful centerpiece for life. You know, love alone has value. Love alone is the virtue that goes with us beyond the grave, he says in another place. He goes on here, this last little paragraph on liberty. There cannot be any growth without liberty. Our ancestors freed religious thought, and we have a wonderful religion. But they put a heavy chain on the feet of society, and our society is, in a word, horrid, diabolical. In the West, society always had freedom, and look at them. On the other hand, look at their religion. Liberty is the first condition of growth. Just as man must have liberty to think and speak, so he must have liberty in food, in dress, in marriage, and in every other thing, so long as he does not injure others. So this wonderful freedom to think, one of the most beautiful things that gave me so much confidence in moving into a monastery without understanding what I was doing, was this knowledge that in Vedanta there was no blasphemy, that I could ask any question, that I could posit any idea, that I could think about any alternative and grow from it and learn from it. That when I walked into the philosophy, one of the beautiful things was I so deeply appreciated that I didn't have to deny anything. You know, I didn't have to make a statement of belief. I didn't have to make a statement of faith. I didn't have to, decide that I would not read these books. I would only read those books. I wouldn't talk to these people. I would only talk to those people. None of that was part of it. Liberty freedom is the centerpiece of growth, the first condition of being able to expand. And this plays into that very first idea there at the beginning, to kindle this light of awareness. Don't be afraid. Don't live in fear of the possibilities that are there. Pick them up and look at them. Let go of the things you need to let go of. I use the word for myself. Give yourself permission to let go of your favorite things. The things that have kept you living in a well, that have kept you safe within a boundary that wasn't real. Give yourself permission to live differently tomorrow, to try differently. If things aren't working, give yourself permission to walk out and try again, something completely new. There is no samskara behind you in reality. Yesterday does not have to determine today. Always give yourself permission to be free, to try again, try something new, experiment with a different idea, and expand, grow, and by all means, love. So that's this notion of unity and where it comes from for us. Any questions or concerns, addendums, stories?
I think I'll share a little story of mine as to what brought me to Vedanta. Is this unity which you talked about? I actually grew up, or 4 or 5 years of my formative years were in a Catholic school, and I knew about the stories of Jesus even before I knew the stories about Krishna. And Hinduism came much later in my life. But as my seeking started, as I became older, I came across all these little groups, and whether it was ISKCON or it was this Swami or that Swami started, and everybody had those walls put up, and that this was the only truth. And I said, no, for me, Jesus was true, and Krishna was true. And I said, there has to be something which doesn't have, it's not walled off. And so when I came to read about Sri Ramakrishna and came here, that was, and especially at Beta, which was about a few months later, I was just blown away. And I knew that I had come home. I said, this is what I was looking for all my life. This is it, and it was like, it was just wonderful. So this unity was, very important, as for me. So
yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's very true. It's interesting because too, it's the first lesson we hear Ramakrishna giving to M is the same lesson. Do you believe in God with form? Mm-hmm. And he was confused, like, well, of course, well, there is no other, And at the end of the lesson, Ramakrishna says to him, he says, believe in God with form or believe in him without form. It's fine. Take the one that you believe and stick to it. Don't be wishy-washy. Stick to your own tradition, your own idea. He said that again tonight. He doesn't want us to change paths. Stick with your path, but never believe that your path alone is right. Never believe that your watch alone is right. And it's fascinating that that's the first thing that we hear, that we're taught from Ramakrishna when you open the gospel. That's the first lesson. And how that's lived out.
I was just going to share with you. I think the first time when I saw the little crack in the Christianity that I was pre-involved with the Lutheran Church, and I'll never forget this. It just created that first crack. We had this lovely lady come in to our Sunday school, and I must have been about 12. And she gave a wonderful presentation about her religion, which was Hindu. explained everything to us. Very lovely, gracious person. And then as soon as she left, the Sunday school teacher said, well, that's not like what you believe in. And really, like you were saying, said that wasn't a valid religion. And I remember I was so taken aback that I felt that, as Christians, we needed to be more gracious to other people, and that we were not being hospitable to her. And it, like I said, it was just before, I was getting confirmed, when they really push the doctrine at you. And I, I went through it all, but I never, I had taken a break from the church just because of that. And as a
Yeah,
child, I could see that was not right.
yeah. I suspect, of course, not necessarily knowing, but that this was imposed on Christianity, this exclusivity. When I was up at Holy Cross Monastery, I was studying with one of the old monks there, who had a doctorate from Oxford in England. So you kind of get that picture in your mind. And he was telling me he was kind of a radical in himself, and he and I would get together every day and study for like an hour and a half. And he always used to accuse me. He said, "Arguing with you is like arguing with a marshmallow."
Okay.
He said that I wouldn't oppose anything he said. But one of the things he shared that was quite insightful for me is he said all 7 of the first meetings of Christianity to form the church and to decide on the canon, the scriptures, every one of the first 7 meetings was either convened by or presided over by the emperor.
Ah, well,
And it was at a time when the empire, the Roman Empire, was disintegrating. And his interest was in creating something that would unify and strengthen the empire.
yeah, there's
So,
unity for you.
yeah, but a very specific unity,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very defined unity. And I thought how interesting it is that it wasn't presided by one of the church elders or one of the learned sages or one of the desert fathers or one of the monks. It was they were called, convened, and presided over by a politician. The first 7 meetings that decided the Bible, that decided the structure of the church, that decided what was doctrine and what was heresy. You know, I was stunned by that. I was like,
Yeah.
what an obvious deviation. What did the church look like before that, when you had these disparate groups meeting in sincere worship, but you didn't have a centralized book. You didn't have a centralized government or a centralized structure. What did that look like? It would be very much more open, people learning from each other. And in the book of Hebrews, it was very interesting to me where it says, all scripture is profitable for teaching, for growing in righteousness, and for knowing God. All scripture. And of course, I was taught my whole life that meant the Bible. But at the time that book was written, there was no Bible. So what exactly was he talking about? Is it in fact perhaps all scripture is valuable for teaching and for reproof, for training in righteousness and knowledge of the divine? Is it possible? You know? So anyway, yes. So see this oneness everywhere you look. Make that your exercise at the supermarket. Secondarily, buy groceries. Primarily, look around and think, look, we're all here buying food together. There's a sign of oneness.
Mhm.
So anyway, that is as it is. All right. Shall we call it a night?